So you leave a job, right, a job you really cared about, but someone above you just, well, they didn't care at all. You watched your good work get blocked, your good ideas get ignored.
Right, and your good intentions were basically punished by a manager who, only moved when it served them.
Exactly. So eventually you leave for something better. You arrive at the new job, different company, different colleagues, totally different conditions.
But somehow, you are working as if you never left. You're pushing for the exact same outcomes, running the exact same defensive plays.
Yeah, you're subconsciously looking around the new office for people who remind you of the old team, all so you can, finally get the results you were supposed to get back then.
Which brings us to the overarching thread we're unraveling here. It's the massive friction between our internal intentions and our external reality.
Because we constantly forfeit our personal agency by reacting to illusions, don't we?
We do. We perform for ghosts of the past, we hide behind empty complaints, we avoid our actual work, and we operate under this delusion of limitless goodwill.
So in that specific scenario of starting a new job, the ghost of your old boss isn't actually in the room, but you're still performing this highly elaborate routine entirely for them.
Yeah, it's a trap. You're trying to win a game that's already over.
It's exactly like shadowboxing. You are exhausting yourself taking heavy hits from an opponent who already left the ring months ago.
Spot on.
Hmm.
You aren't working on the actual present problems sitting on your new desk. You're working on old problems with new props, hoping that this time you can finally flip the scoreboard.
So since this behavioral loop creeps in so slowly, just one subconscious decision at a time, how do you actually catch yourself doing it before it ruins the new opportunity?
Well, catching it requires a really short disruptive intervention. The moment you feel your behaviors are pulling an unjustified amount of emotion from you, you have to ask yourself one question.
Which is?
Who am I doing this for? If the honest answer traces back to someone who is no longer in your daily life, you found a ghost.
Okay, so once you spot the ghost, what's the actual mechanical process to untangle that?
It's targeted journaling. On a physical page, you force your brain to separate the valid professional lesson you learned from the emotional grudge you carried out of it.
I get the goal of separating them, but those two things naturally fuse together in our minds, don't they?
They do, yeah. We intimately associate the valid lesson, like learning to document our work better, with the emotional pain of having our work stolen or ignored.
Right. So how does literally just writing it down actually sever that psychological connection?
Because the act of writing changes how your brain processes the event. When you're stuck in that emotional loop, your brain is firing largely from the amygdala.
The emotional processing center.
Exactly. You are reacting to perceived threats that belong to the past. But by forcing yourself to articulate the frustration onto a physical page, you mechanically force your brain to engage the prefrontal cortex.
Oh, so you're transforming a vague emotional haunting into a tangible, logical problem.
Yes. And a single entry doesn't settle the score, but patterns across weeks do. You'll notice the same name showing up, the same phrase triggering you.
And the same flare of frustration tied to a current situation that actually has absolutely nothing to do with the person you're mad at.
Precisely. Because the deepest psychological trap operating under the surface here is that the person who became the ghost is inherently incapable of giving you the acknowledgement you crave.
Which is the exact reason they got under your skin in the first place, right?
Right. The chase was rigged from the very start. We exhaust our current, valuable energy running a race where the only person qualified to hand out the trophy is physically incapable of giving one.
So you just have to leave the ghost at the door because they don't get a vote in what happens next in your career.
Exactly. But, even when you commit to taking that observable action and finally leave those ghosts behind, a new friction point emerges.
Because once you stop fighting the ghosts of the past, you're forced to look directly at the present.
Right. Specifically, you have to look at the immediate frustrations in your current environment that you just tolerate.
And this introduces a really fascinating paradox regarding personal standards. We claim to have incredibly high standards, and we know exactly what good looks like.
Yet simultaneously, we have an even higher tolerance for broken systems and daily mediocrity. We see this paradox constantly with persistent workplace issues.
Like when the marketing projects never land on time, or the communication between engineering and sales is entirely broken.
Exactly. And nothing gets followed through. You've had the conversation a dozen times with different people in different rooms, and absolutely nothing changes.
Including what you were doing about it. You just keep complaining, but wait, I need to challenge this directly. Isn't complaining just a harmless way to vent?
How so?
Well, if you're listening to this right now, you probably have a group chat dedicated solely to venting about workplace absurdities. We all need to blow off steam. How does simply talking about a problem actually erode our professional standards?
Because complaining from the back seat costs you absolutely nothing.
Okay.
You have no skin in the game, no professional face to lose if your proposed solution is wrong.
You exert no effort beyond just having the opinion.
Right. You get the temporary psychological satisfaction of being right without any of the downside risk that comes with actually trying to fix the problem.
So every single time you complain without taking action, you hand over a piece of your personal agency to someone else.
Yes, you're secretly expecting them to fix it for you. If you do that long enough, your standards don't just lower, they simply disappear.
The mechanism there is completely insidious. We think we are maintaining our standards by verbally pointing out the flaws.
But the lack of action proves you actually accept the flaws as the permanent baseline. To combat this, you have to adopt a strict behavioral rule.
The two-complaint rule, right?
Exactly. You get to complain about the same frustrating thing exactly twice. The third time it comes up, in your mind or in conversation, you must take a small, observable action outside of your head.
I mean, I understand the rule, but applying it feels almost impossible in a highly structured corporate setting. Let's say I'm a mid-level employee and the entire procurement process is broken.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Taking action feels like overstepping my authority. Am I just supposed to stay silent after the second complaint if I don't have the power to fix the whole system?
The trap there is believing the action must solve the entire problem permanently. Let's look at those consistently late projects. You know exactly why they're late.
Right. Sales closes deals without looping the delivery team in, and timelines are set before anyone sees the scope.
Exactly. So you complain about it twice to your peers. The third time, your action is booking one specific 15-minute call with a single sales lead to get delivery in the room before the next deal closes.
So you aren't drafting a massive company-wide proposal. You're not writing a new procedural document. You are just initiating one single conversation.
One message sent. One targeted question asked to the right person. Because actions, not thoughts, define our standards.
We really can't claim to have high standards if we lack the microscopic actions to back them up, can we? The mental energy we spend complaining in the group chat is the exact same energy we could use to move the problem 1 inch forward.
Absolutely. And committing to taking that observable action naturally leads to the next major hurdle regarding our agency.
Right, because we solved the complaining problem, but now we face the execution problem.
Yeah, when the action required is complex, ambiguous, or intimidating, our brains immediately start looking for a trapdoor.
This is the harsh reality of task avoidance. You're mid-task, and suddenly a line of code breaks, or you realize the financial projection is 3 times more complex than you budgeted for.
And you sit there completely unsure of what the next step is. The discomfort spikes.
So you reach for your phone, you walk away to make a coffee, you organize your desktop folders, you find literally anything that isn't the daunting task sitting in front of you.
And the exits our brains choose feel entirely valid because they're decidedly non-dramatic. You tell yourself you're just taking a necessary short break to clear your head.
But the brain conveniently ignores a fundamental truth. The task does not shrink while you are avoiding it.
Exactly. The complexity does not magically decrease. The problem does not get easier to solve. You simply spent 20 minutes not doing it.
It's the exact same logic as leaving dirty dishes in the sink. We walk away hoping they will somehow resolve themselves, or at least feel less daunting after we watch an episode of television.
But avoidance doesn't pause the work. It actually increases the cognitive load of the work. The food crust just gets harder to scrub the longer you wait.
The dishes don't clean themselves, the weight of the pending task remains exactly the same, and the clock keeps running. The stress just compounds in the background.
That's exactly it.
So where's the exact line between taking a genuinely helpful break to clear your head and just running away from the discomfort?
The dividing line is the strict boundary of intent. You can absolutely ask a colleague to jump on a brief call to help you think of a solution.
Or you might even find the answer yourself just by explaining the complex situation out loud to them.
Right. If your personal process involves going for a walk around the block or bouncing a tennis ball against the wall until a solution clicks, that is perfectly acceptable.
But those techniques are only valid if the explicit conscious goal is to unblock the task.
Exactly. The very second the walk or the ball bouncing becomes a mechanism to delay facing the work, it instantly transforms into avoidance.
Because the work itself doesn't register the difference between a well-intentioned break and blatant avoidance. It just sits there waiting for input.
There is no version of reality where the work gets done without facing it directly. The only way out of the complexity is through it.
And, we are absolute masters at avoiding our own heavy tasks and rationalizing our trapdoors, which makes it incredibly ironic how quickly we will rush to take on other people's problems.
Oh, yeah. The delusion of infinite resources.
If you're listening right now and thinking of a specific coworker who constantly drains your energy with their daily crises, you are probably mentally preparing to jump in and save them again tomorrow.
Because wanting to help people is a fundamentally good instinct. We see someone struggling and we naturally move toward them.
So the core issue isn't the instinct to help. It's when that good instinct twists into pure delusion.
Exactly. We operate under the false assumption that our personal resources are infinite. But time runs out. Emotional energy runs out.
And the specific technical or emotional knowledge required to help someone isn't always something we actually possess.
Wishing to help badly enough doesn't magically replenish those three finite resources. You have to apply rigorous filters before you dive headfirst into someone else's crisis.
Because if we don't, we end up avoiding our own dirty dishes to go wash someone else's. So what is the framework for ensuring we're actually providing help and not just burning out?
There are 4 rigorous checks you must run internally. The first check requires discerning their actual motive.
Like, do they actually want help to change their situation, or do they just want a captive audience to validate their mud?
Exactly. A person who wants an audience to hear them complain, and a person who genuinely wants a way out of their problem are asking for entirely different things.
Treating them the same wastes both your time and theirs, but spotting the difference requires paying very close attention to their intent. How do you distinguish someone validating their mud from someone seeking a ladder?
That leads directly to the second, much harder check. Do their actions show a desire to change? You must watch the behavior, completely ignoring the words.
Right, someone can ask for your advice every single week, nod aggressively while you speak, and show absolutely no sign of acting on any of it.
If the pattern is an endless loop of ask, receive, ignore, and repeat, then you have your definitive answer. Their commitment to change is zero, and your help is merely fueling their cycle.
Okay, but what about our own capacity to deliver the help? Often we jump into the fray just because we care deeply about the person, regardless of our actual skill set.
That is the third check, and unfortunately the one well-meaning people skip most often. Do you actually possess the specific expertise required for this exact problem?
You mean putting your ego completely aside?
Yes. A friend going through a serious mental health crisis or a severe financial bankruptcy requires a trained professional, not just a caring friend with good intentions.
I need to push back on the rigidity of this framework, though. Isn't it a bit cold to run a clinical 4-point checklist on a friend or colleague in desperate need?
I know it sounds that way.
Like, doesn't true empathy sometimes mean just jumping in blindly, absorbing some of their chaos, simply because you care about them?
It feels cold in the moment, sure, but goodwill deployed without the right knowledge or energy actually produces significantly worse outcomes for everyone involved.
Oh, so?
Think about the implications of the fourth and final check. Do you have the energy to spare? Helping from an empty tank doesn't produce good help.
It produces deep resentment, rushed and poor advice.
Exactly. And a version of you that gets worse at navigating these delicate situations over time. Genuine help requires the difficult wisdom to know when not to step in.
So navigating our own massive, unmoving tasks and deciding exactly when to step into other people's crises ultimately tests the core internal compass we operate by.
Yes, we're trying to build agency and maintain high standards.
But what happens when doing the exact right thing, following your internal compass flawlessly, gets you absolutely nowhere in reality?
This scenario forces us to confront the harsh, unfair realities of acting with integrity in the real world.
Like spending 3 full weeks building something clean, elegant, and highly effective for a prospective client, you do everything right.
And then you lose the deal to a competitor who literally copy-pasted a generic template, charged less money, and walked away with the contract.
Or staying completely professional and measured in a high-stakes meeting while a colleague explicitly steals credit for your hard work right in front of upper management.
And management praises them for it. It's maddening.
Viscerally infuriating. If you've ever sat in a room while someone else took credit for your late nights, you know the feeling of the silence in the room and your suit collar suddenly feeling too tight.
It makes you want to instantly change your behavior and abandon your values entirely.
Because it feels completely justified in that moment. You tried being the good person, you played by the rules, you did the work, and look exactly where it got you.
We face this choice constantly.
So, are your values a thermostat that sets the temperature of the entire room, or are they just a thermometer merely reacting to the heat of whoever happens to be standing around you?
That's the perfect question.
How do you protect yourself from getting walked on without lowering your own standards to match the exact people who cheat?
Well, to use your thermostat analogy directly, outsourcing your identity means you have chosen to become the thermometer. The bad actor raised the heat in the room by stealing your credit, and your internal mercury just shot right up to match their toxicity.
So, setting firm boundaries is how you rewire yourself back into a thermostat.
Exactly. The fundamental truth you must anchor to is that the external scoreboard does not dictate your internal character. You were generous before anyone ignored you. You played fair before anyone cheated you.
The bad actor's behavior belongs entirely to them, but your response remains entirely yours.
Dealing with terrible people who got lucky doing the wrong thing does not grant you permission to abandon your values.
But we still have to survive and advance in corporate environments where these people operate freely. We can't just be passive targets absorbing bad behavior while silently patting ourselves on the back for having high standards.
No, you protect yourself practically by denying those bad actors a second chance to leverage your work. You establish firm, observable boundaries moving forward. You document your contributions publicly.
You just absolutely cannot outsource your core identity to whoever wronged you last.
Exactly. Acting on your own internal compass, completely regardless of the external outcome or the immediate reward, is the very definition of true character.
Because if you abandon your integrity simply because a bad actor won a single round, you are letting their broken compass dictate your future direction.
Which leads us to a difficult realization. If your values only appear when a reward is guaranteed, they were never truly values to begin with. They were merely virtue signaling.
So true agency, which really is the connecting thread of everything we've discussed today, means maintaining your internal posture no matter what the external environment throws at you.
You stop performing for ghosts. You take observable action against broken systems. Instead of just complaining in the group chat, you face the unmoving tasks without seeking comfortable trapdoors, and you recognize the strict limits of your own goodwill.
If true character is maintaining your values without any promise of a reward, and if ultimate agency requires we stop performing for the ghosts of our past, what happens when you hold your deepest current life ambitions up to that exact same light? Are the goals you are exhausting yourself to achieve right now truly yours? Or are they just highly elaborate, exhausting performances designed to finally win a trophy from a ghost you haven't even identified yet?